The conference room hummed with tension. Filled with delegates from a dozen worlds, Ambassador Lydia Grant stood at the head of the crystalline table, her hands steady despite the weight of Earth's future resting on her shoulders. Around her, aliens of every conceivable shape observed with unblinking eyes, the insectoid Krix, the aquatic Drell in their environment suits, the towering stone-like Vormak. This summit would determine humanity's place in the galactic collective, and everyone knew it. At her feet, Murphy, the tabby cat, sat with his tail wrapped around his paws, amber eyes fixed on the corner of the room where nothing existed. Lydia had rescued Murphy from a shelter 3 years ago, a scarred veteran of street fights with a notched ear and a stubborn personality. He'd been her companion through countless late nights reviewing treaties and studying alien customs. When the summit organizers questioned bringing a pet, she'd insisted. Murphy kept her grounded. Murphy kept her human. Now Murphy's ears flattened against his skull. A low growl rumbled from his chest. "Ambassador Grant," chittered the Krix delegate, mandibles clicking nervously. "Perhaps your creature is unwell. The station's artificial gravity sometimes disturbs Earth fauna." Lydia glanced down. Murphy's gaze hadn't wavered from that empty corner. His pupils were fully dilated, his body coiled tight as a spring. She'd seen that posture before, right before he'd caught the mouse that had somehow infiltrated her apartment's climate control system. But there was nothing in that corner, just bare wall and recycled air. "He's fine," Lydia said, forcing confidence into her voice. "Shall we continue with the trade agreement?" The Vormak representative, a being named Granite Who Speaks, rumbled forward. "The mineral rights you propose are acceptable, but we require assurances about your military expansion. Humanity has built 17 new battle cruisers in the past cycle. This concerns us." "Defensive vessels only," Lydia countered. "We've seen what happens to species without adequate protection." She pulled up holographic displays showing pirate raids along human colonies. "The statistics irrefutable," Murphy hissed. Every alien in the room froze. The Drell's tentacles retracted into their suit. The Krix delegate skittered backward, compound eyes reflecting the room's sterile lights in 1,000 facets of fear. "What's wrong?" Lydia asked, scanning their faces. "It's just my cat." But Murphy wasn't looking at them. His head tracked something moving along the wall, something invisible, something that made the most hardened warriors in the galaxy shrink in terror. Then Murphy pounced. He launched himself at the empty air with a yowl that could wake the dead, claws extended, moving with the precision of a predator who'd never missed his mark. His front paws connected with something solid 3 feet above the floor, something that shrieked. Purple blood sprayed across the white wall. The room erupted into chaos. Aliens dove for cover as Murphy tumbled to the ground, fur standing on end, hissing at a shimmer that now rippled through the air like heat waves over asphalt. Security alarms blared. Lockdown protocols engaged with a pneumatic hiss as blast doors sealed every exit. And then they appeared. First one, then another, then dozens, translucent figures materializing like ghosts becoming solid. They were humanoid in shape but elongated, with limbs too long and joints that bent at unnatural angles. Their skin was the color of oil on water, constantly shifting through purple and silver hues. Where Murphy had struck, one clutched its arm, that impossible purple blood seeping between fingers that had too many segments. Lydia's hand moved to her sidearm, but she didn't draw. "Not yet. Identify yourselves, now." The wounded one stepped forward, and when it spoke, its voice resonated from everywhere and nowhere, like wind through a canyon. "We are the Veil. We mean no harm, Ambassador Grant." "No harm?" Lydia's voice cracked like a whip. "You've been spying on us." "How long? How many meetings have you infiltrated?" The Veil being lowered its head, a gesture that seemed almost human in its submission. "Since your first contact with the collective, 4 months, 17 days. We have observed every diplomatic session, every negotiation, every private moment you believed secure." The other delegates erupted in overlapping protests and accusations. The Krix delegate chittered so rapidly his translator couldn't keep pace. Granite Who Speaks slammed a massive fist against the table, cracking the crystal surface. But Lydia noticed something else. She noticed how the Veil shrank back from the noise, how their forms flickered as if struggling to maintain solidity. She noticed how they positioned themselves near exits even though the doors were sealed. She noticed fear. Murphy had stopped hissing. He sat at Lydia's feet again, watching the veil with an intensity that bordered on obsessive, but the hostility had drained from his posture. His tail twitched. Curious now? Cautious. Lydia held up a hand and somehow, impossibly, the room quieted. Everyone sit down. Nobody moves until I understand what's happening here. She fixed her gaze on the wounded veil. You said you mean no harm. Prove it. Why spy on humanity? The being's form solidified further, as if the question itself anchored it to reality. Because we are dying, Ambassador. Our people. Our worlds. We watched humanity emerge into the stars and saw something we have not seen in millennia. Adaptation, innovation, the willingness to fight when others would flee. We needed to know if you were what you appeared to be, or if it was deception. So you violated our trust to determine if we were trustworthy? The irony wasn't lost on Lydia, but she kept her tone measured. That's quite the paradox. We had no choice, another veil spoke up. This one's smaller, its colors paler. The Devourers come. They have consumed 16 of our colony worlds in the past solar cycle. We are not warriors, Ambassador Grant. We evolved invisibility to hide, to survive. But you cannot hide from machines that see in every spectrum, that feel the displacement of air, that calculate the chemical composition of breath. They are finding us. They are ending us. The Drell delegate gurgled through his translator. The Devourers are a myth, a cautionary tale told to young species. No, Granite Who Speaks' voice carried a weight of ages. They are real. The Vormak encountered them 8,000 cycles ago. We built our civilization in the deep rocks to escape them. We watched them strip 3 systems to bare metal before they moved on. If the Veil speak truth, they have returned. Silence fell like a shroud. Even Murphy seemed to sense the gravity. His ears perked forward, listening. Lydia's mind raced through scenarios, possibilities, consequences. This was beyond her authority, beyond any protocol Earth had prepared for. But looking at the Veil, at their trembling forms, at the purple blood still dripping from the wounded one's arm, at the desperation in their otherworldly eyes, she saw something fundamental. She saw people trying to survive. You were right to be cautious, Lydia said finally, and wrong to spy. Both things can be true. She walked to the Veil delegate, close enough that Murphy tensed but didn't growl, close enough to see the intricate patterns that swirled beneath their skin like galaxies in motion. But Murphy saw you. In 4 months of invisibility, one Earthcat exposed you in 30 seconds. How? The Veil seemed genuinely baffled. We do not know. Our biology bends light, suppresses sound, masks thermal signatures. We are invisible to every species in the collective, every sensor, every technology. But your small hunter, the being looked down at Murphy with something approaching reverence. He perceives truth itself. Murphy yawned, showing needle-sharp teeth, utterly unconcerned with his new cosmic significance. Lydia almost smiled. Almost. Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna tell me everything about the Devourers, capabilities, last known positions, patterns of attack. Then we're going to have a very frank discussion about trust and alliances, and what it means to ask for help instead of stealing intelligence. And if we refuse, the wounded Veil asked quietly, then I send Murphy after you again, and next time I won't stop him. It wasn't really a joke, but the Veil understood the underlying message. They'd been caught. Their invisibility, their greatest survival trait, had been negated by a simple Earth animal. They had no leverage, no bargaining position. They had only the truth. The Pale Veil stepped forward. I am Kesra, Scout Prime of the 7th Veil. I will tell you what you need to know. But Ambassador Grant, you must understand. When the Devourers come, and they will come, invisibility will not save us. Diplomacy will not save us. Only strength of arms, tactical genius, and the willingness to fight against impossible odds will matter. We watched humanity's military engagements. We studied your battles against the Krenth pirates, your defense of the outer colonies. You fight with a ferocity that terrifies and inspires in equal measure. We needed to know if that ferocity came from honor or from madness. And what did you conclude? Lydia asked. We concluded, Kestra said, their forms shimmering with emotion Lydia couldn't quite interpret, that humanity fights fiercest for those who cannot fight for themselves. That your ambassador brings a damaged creature to the most important meeting of her life because she promised him safety, and keeps that promise even when it seems foolish. That perhaps, if we asked, you might fight for us too. The words hung in the recycled air like a prayer. Lydia looked around the room at the assembled delegates. The Cricks still cowered but watched intently. The Drell had emerged from their suit's protective posture. Granted, who speaks met her gaze with ancient eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. Did you all know? Lydia asked them. About the veil? Granted, who speaks nodded slowly. We suspected. Strange inconsistencies in sensor readings, doors opening with no one near, the feeling of being observed. But to accuse an entire species of espionage without proof would shatter the collective. We stayed silent. Cowardice, the Cricks delegate chittered. We chose political stability over truth. You chose survival, Lydia corrected. I understand that. But here's what humanity chooses. We choose transparency. We choose trust, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because if the Devourers are real, if they're coming, we need every species, every advantage, every ally we can muster, including allies who can turn invisible. She extended her hand toward Kesra. But no more spying. No more shadows. If the Veil want humanity's help, you join the collective properly. Full membership. Full disclosure. Full accountability. And in return, Earth will stand with you against the Devourers. Kesra stared at the offered hand as if it were a weapon. You would trust us? After what we have done? Trust is earned, not given, Lydia said. But everyone deserves the chance to earn it. Even invisible aliens who bleed purple and get outsmarted by cats. Murphy chose that moment to walk over to Kesra and rub against their leg, purring. The Veil Scout froze, terrified and awed in equal measure as the small Earth predator marked them as safe. Kesra knelt slowly, bringing their elongated face level with Murphy's. They reached out with those too many jointed fingers and gently touched the cat's scarred ear. Small hunter who sees truth, they whispered. You have saved my people by revealing us. The Veil will honor this debt. Then Kesra straightened and took Lydia's hand. Their grip was cool, almost electric, like touching morning dew. We accept your terms, Ambassador Grant. Full transparency. Full alliance. And when the Devourers come, the Veil will stand visible beside humanity and we will fight as we have never fought before. The other delegates erupted into discussion, some supporting the decision, others protesting, but Lydia ignored them all. She was watching Murphy, who had returned to his spot at her feet and was now grooming his paw with complete disinterest in the diplomatic revolution he'd just triggered. Over the next hours, as security protocols were lifted and emergency sessions called, Kesra delivered their intelligence. The Devourers were machine entities, possibly artificial intelligence gone wrong from some ancient civilization. They moved through space in massive harvester ships, stripping worlds of resources to build more of themselves. They followed predictable patterns, clearing one sector before moving to the next. The Veil's home systems were in their projected path. So were 3 collective worlds. So was Earth's outer territory. The timeline was uncertain but probable, 6 months to a year before first contact. Lydia transmitted everything to Earth Command, watched the brass go pale over secured video feeds, and then made the hardest call of her career. We're going to war, she told the Joint Chiefs. Not because we want to, but because if we don't, there won't be anything left to defend. The Collective Council met in emergency session for 3 days straight. Old grievances were aired, ancient treaties examined, military capabilities assessed. The Vormak offered their deep rock fortifications as manufacturing centers. The Cricks, despite their fear, pledged their speed and numbers. The Drell contributed their expertise in fluid dynamics and unconventional warfare. And humanity? Humanity offered what it always offered: stubborn refusal to surrender, and the tactical creativity born from a species that had spent millennia fighting itself before finally reaching for the stars. The Veil were formally inducted into the collective on the 4th day in a ceremony broadcast across 100 worlds. Kesra stood visible before the assembled leadership, their form no longer shimmering with fear, but solid with purpose, and swore an oath of transparency that their people had never given before. At the ceremony's conclusion, Kesra did something unprecedented. They knelt before Ambassador Lydia Grant and placed a small crystal at her feet. "This is a Veil Truth Stone," they explained. "It can only be given once in our lifetime. To the being who changes our path. You did not have to trust us, Ambassador. You chose to. That choice has saved us." Then Kesra looked at Murphy, who watched from Lydia's shoulder where he'd been draped like a living stole. "And you, small hunter, you saw what no one else could see. In the old stories of my people, there is a legend of a seer who would reveal us in our time of greatest need, forcing us to stand in the light and fight. We thought it would be a great warrior or a cosmic force. We did not expect a creature who weighs 4 kilograms and enjoys napping in sunbeams," Murphy meowed, utterly unimpressed with his mythological status, and Kesra laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm, beautiful and strange. The fleets mobilized within weeks. Human battlecruisers joined Vormak dreadnoughts and Crick swarm fighters, the Drell-designed weapons that could function in hard vacuum and crushing depths. The Veil, no longer hiding, served as scouts and intelligence officers, their ability to become invisible now a tactical advantage shared freely with their allies. And in her quarters aboard the flagship Covenant, Ambassador Lydia Grant prepared for a war unlike any humanity had known. She reviewed tactical displays, studied the limited information on Devourer technology, and coordinated with military advisors who were both excited and terrified by the challenge ahead. Murphy sat on her desk, paw resting on the Veil Truth Stone, as if guarding it. "You know," Lydia said to him, scratching behind his notched ear, "you've started a war. Well, not started exactly. Revealed? Catalyzed? Whatever the right word is. You did it." Murphy purred and headbutted her hand, demanding more attention. "I wish I had your confidence," she continued. "The Devourers have destroyed entire civilizations. They've been doing this for thousands of years, and we're going to fight them because one cat could see invisible aliens, and I decided that meant something. That's either the bravest thing humanity's ever done, or the stupidest." A knock on the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Kesra entered, their form now wearing what approximated a military uniform, a harness of woven silver that marked them as Scout Prime. "Ambassador, the forward scouts have detected anomalies in the outer fringe. The Devourers may arrive sooner than projected." Lydia's stomach tightened, but she kept her expression calm. "How soon?" "Days, perhaps hours." Kesra's color shifted to a deep purple that Lydia had learned meant determination. "But we are ready. Your species has taught us something crucial, Ambassador Grant. You taught us that being seen, being vulnerable, being known, these are not weaknesses. They are the foundations of strength. The Veil hid for millennia, and we grew weak in our invisibility. Now we stand visible, and for the first time in our history, we do not stand alone." Lydia stood, Murphy immediately jumping to her shoulder. "Then let's make sure the Devourers regret finding us. All of us." As she walked toward the bridge, past crew members from a dozen worlds preparing for battle, Lydia realized something profound. Murphy hadn't just exposed the Veil, he'd exposed a fundamental truth about power and trust and survival. The strongest alliances weren't built on secrets and shadows. They were built in the light, where everyone could see each other's scars and choose to stand together anyway. The Devourers came 3 days later, massive ships that blotted out stars, their hulls reflecting nothing. They descended on the outer fringe colonies with mechanical precision, harvester beams already extending toward the planets below, and they met the combined fleet of the Galactic Collective, visible and invisible forces united, led by a human ambassador, who'd learned that sometimes the smallest acts of trust, believing in a cat's instincts, offering a hand to spies, choosing transparency over suspicion, could change the fate of galaxies. The battle that followed would be remembered for generations. The Covenant's war logs recorded it all, but the most important entry came from Ambassador Lydia Grant herself, written in the quiet hours after the first engagement, with Murphy sleeping on her lap and the stars wheeling beyond the viewport. Today we learned that the Devourers can be stopped. They are powerful, but not invincible. They calculate, but do not adapt. They consume, but do not create. Against them stands something they cannot process. Species who have every reason to distrust each other, choosing unity instead. We have our differences, we have our conflicts, but when one cat exposed an invisible species and one human chose to trust them anyway, we became something greater than the sum of our parts. We became what the Devourers can never be, alive in every sense of the word. And life, stubborn and fierce and sometimes guided by a rescue cat's instincts, will always find a way to survive. Murphy woke, stretched, and resumed his eternal watch over the Truth Stone, guardian of the alliance he'd created with nothing more than good eyes and a hunter's heart. In the viewport's reflection, Lydia could see her own tired smile and knew, whatever came next, humanity had done what it did best, turned the impossible into merely difficult, and then fought like hell to make it reality.